All right, let's jump right in. We are about to explore the world of organizational change, a world that can feel pretty messy and confusing at times. So think of this explainer as your personal guide, your map to navigating the challenges and, yes, the opportunities that always come with change. You've probably heard this one a million times, right? But it's a cliche for a reason. It's just true, especially in business today. We've all been there. That feeling when the ground shifts beneath your feet at work. This isn't just some abstract idea. It's the reality every single organization is dealing with right now. So that brings us to the first big idea. For any organization, change isn't a possibility, it's an inevitability. The real question isn't if it's going to happen, but when, and how you're going to handle it when it does. Now, what are we really talking about when we say organizational change? This isn't just about, tweaking a few things here and there. We are talking about massive, fundamental shifts. Things like a complete corporate restructuring, merging with another company, or rolling out some new technology that completely rewires how everyone does their job. It's the big stuff. So what's pushing all this transformation? Well, you could say it's kind of a perfect storm. You've got technology that makes yesterday's tools feel ancient. You've got intense pressure to cut costs. And fierce competition means if you stand still, you're going to get left behind. It's all these forces that actually make standing still the riskiest move of all. So if change is a given, how do the best leaders handle it? Is it just chaos? Nope. Turns out successful change isn't random at all. Smart leaders use established models. Think of them as playbooks or even navigational charts to steer the ship. Let's kick things off with a true classic. A guy named Kurt Lewin, who was a real pioneer in this field, came up with a model that's so simple but so powerful. It's like the basic foundational map for understanding how change actually happens. And Lewin's model, it's brilliant because it uses the simple analogy of ice. First, you gotta unfreeze. That means you have to melt the existing way of doing things. You have to make people see that the old way isn't working anymore. Then you have the change itself. That's the messy middle part where you're actually putting new things in place. But this last part, the refreeze, is absolutely critical. This is where you lock in the new habits, making them the new solid state, the new normal. If you skip this, people just slide right back to how things were before. Okay, so Lewin's model is a great starting point, a simple map. But what happens when the change is way more complex? For that, leaders often need a more detailed playbook. That's where John Cotter's model comes in. It basically takes Lewin's ideas and expands them into an 8-step guide for those really tough journeys. Now, what I think is so powerful about Cotter's model is how it's all about building momentum. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. You start with urgency, get the right team together, and then you just keep pushing. You clear roadblocks out of the way, you celebrate small victories to show people it's working, and you just don't let up until that new way of doing things is completely baked into the culture. But, of course, no plan, no matter how good, ever goes perfectly smoothly, right? Because you always run into the biggest hurdle of all: people. We're talking about that predictable, totally human pushback you get when you try to pull people out of their comfort zone. We're talking about the wall of resistance. And it's really useful to understand that resistance isn't just one thing. It really breaks down into two main types. Sometimes people are resisting the content. They just flat out disagree with what's being changed. But other times, it's about the process. They might actually think the change is a good idea, but they hate how it's being done. Maybe it was sprung on them with no warning, or they feel like they had no say. It's the what versus the how. And this is so important to get. When people resist, it's almost never because they're just being difficult. It's because of very real, very human fears. There's the fear of the unknown, the feeling of losing control, even the fear of losing face, like the change implies their old work was wrong. And a big one, worrying if their skills will still be valuable. It's all about basic human needs for security and confidence. Okay, so we've seen the wall. We understand why it's there. So, how do we get through it? The best leaders don't just try to ram their way through it. They use specific strategies to carefully take that wall apart, brick by brick, and bring people along with them. All right, this is super interesting. Leaders basically have a toolkit with 4 different strategies.
The rational, empirical way is all about logic. You show people the data, you prove to them that this change is in their best interest. Then you have the normative, re-educative approach. This one's deeper. It's about changing hearts and minds, shifting the culture's values. Then there's power coercive. That's using authority. It's the top-down, we're doing this, mandate. And finally, action-centered, which is pure problem solving, just getting in there and fixing what's broken. The real genius of leadership is knowing which of these tools to pull out of the bag at the right time.
All right, we're on the home stretch now, but getting to the destination isn't the end of the story. The final, and maybe the hardest part of the journey, is making sure that the change actually sticks, that this new place becomes the new normal. And to make it stick, you absolutely need a change agent. This is your captain of the ship. Their job is part technical, the planning, the resources, the timelines. But it's also part inspirational. They're the head cheerleader, the person who keeps morale up, calms fears, and makes sure everyone stays on board for the entire trip. And finally, how do you know if you actually succeeded? Well, you have to measure it, right? You have to check the map. That's where evaluation comes in. You can use surveys, do deep dive case studies, or even track the results over months or years. The point is you have to know if you actually achieved what you set out to do. Otherwise, you're just guessing. So, I want to leave you with this really powerful thought to chew on. There's this story about a well-meaning gardener who saw a butterfly struggling to get out of its cocoon. So he decided to help and carefully opened it up. But the butterfly that came out had weak, floppy wings and could never fly. Turns out, the struggle to break free is what pushes fluid into the butterfly's wings and makes them strong. So the big question we have to ask ourselves is, when we're managing change, when is our effort to help people actually rob them of the struggle they need to grow strong and adapt for themselves? Something to think about.